Hey, welcome to Better Assholes. My name is Sean Empire, and thank you for listening. Today, we're talking about something that has probably crossed everybody's mind in the last, say, 5 years or so. It's probably even longer than 5 years, but ever since COVID, everything seems like it's been 5 years. So let's just stick with the 5 year trend, right? So, what we're talking about today is something that's crazy. It is who is buying EVs? Who's really buying EVs? I keep hearing about how EVs are the future from other EV drivers, from people that own EV companies and manufacturers making EVs, people selling chargers, whatever. But the people I'm seeing aren't buying any of these cars, with the exception, and the exception being Tesla. Now, Tesla, there was a time where people were really dying for Tesla cars. I used to see, maybe some of these younger, millennials and whatnot, Teslas, maybe Generation Alphas or Generation Z or whatever, but a lot of millennials. So when I look at people I know and people I've met and whatnot, usually it tends to be for EVs. It's either very old people, and some of these old people are people that they get talked into it. They realize, and you get the old hippie folks, and really, I think it's not a bad deal for an old person. So I'm not gonna, jump on those people. But uh, yeah, maybe they're buying EVs because old people, you got to think. If I gave my parents an EV and they said, plug this in, it's going to be charged. Whenever you need to go anywhere, just unplug it and go where you need to go. They only travel up to maybe 20 or 30 kilometers anyways. They don't go far. So I mean, maybe it works for them. Um, I look at a lot of other people that I've, known that are, you know, not willing to put in a supercharger, maybe don't live in a spot where they can put in a charger for it, any type of charger, outdoor chargers. I mean, people in old houses have that problem, having to upgrade panels and whatnot. So you have that. Um, it's a lot of things. But anyways, it's to each their own. The thing with the Teslas are most of the drivers tend to be such dicks most of the time. And, I apologize. There's a lot of people out there that maybe aren't dicks and I don't know you and I shouldn't be talking for you. But when I hop in my car and I go out on the road, the car in front of me that apparently is very, very quick and not polluting and so magical and spectacular seems to slow down to do 40 kilometers an hour. So I have a Tesla in front of me blocking me from uh, doing the speed limit. I go into another lane, and most of the time, you have a Tesla just blocking you from going another lane, or you go over a lane and they just start looking at you like you're some sort of jackass. I don't even know. It got pretty crazy. There were a few times I've gone out and had so many issues with Teslas just driving in such a weird ass way. Not even like like an say a aggressive street racer, bro type of way. Like we're talking, beta males or Karens driving, right? So it's pretty. I don't know. It's pretty crazy, right? So, anyways, let's get back to this. Are these the people? Maybe some. I don't know. I can you say this stuff? It's from what I tend to see, it's smug. Those smug millennials that used to wear lumberjack, the lumberjack coats and the big ear loops and whatever. So those guys, they sewed up their ear loops, right? Which apparently you could do. You cut them, you sew them up, and whatever. They got their ear loops sewed up. They ditched their lumberjack jackets for you know for what like those you know suit hoodies or whatever, and now they're driving Teslas. I mean, that's the gist of that, and some Karens, right? So it seems to be annoying people. You talk about environmental cautiousness, but when you're doing something for a brand, a specific brand, uh, just because, I mean, face it, if you want an electric car and you have money, yeah, I mean, I would buy an electric BMW or electric Mercedes or some electric. So I'd take the car I have ready if I like it and I buy an electric version. If I was looking to buy a very, very, very reliable electric car EV, I would buy a Lexus or Toyota EV hands down. And I've seen them used. They hold their value and whatever. I hear they're 100 times better than the Tesla. If I had more money, well, you know what? I'll be honest. The BMWs don't look nice. A lot of the Mercedes don't look nice right now. So, I mean, if I was to buy an EV, it would be some sort of sports car EV. That's what I would be doing, right? But yeah, so at that point, you buy a nice looking Lexus or whatever. But I mean, if you had the money, for instance, and they had some nice EVs from some of the upscale brands, right? Like Lexus, Mercedes, BMW, whatever. I mean, it makes more sense to buy a BMW EV than it does a Tesla. But I mean, of course, half of the Teslas on the road are probably used ex leases, and the rest are, I mean, because they're all Y series or whatever series. So they're not the series that you want to see, right? They're just whatever series, right? So that's where we get, you know, if you really have the money and you really want to floss and you really want to show off, you just buy a very good electric brand, electric car, show off, BMW, buy the extended warranty, and there you go, right? But, you're not obviously doing that. You're going for a Tesla, right? An off lease or used Tesla, whatever. Anyway, so aside from that, a lot of it is the social perception, right? You have the marketing gimmicks, you have the environmental impact, you have the future. Some, countries have said, hey, you know what? We're making sure 100% that you're not going to be able to buy that fancy, you know, your fancy gas powered car that you like to drive. They're already telling you in places like Canada that, hey, 3030 or was it 2030, 2035, you know, they're phasing out these gas cars. Now, this is kind of a problem because right now we're not nearly at that point where people have moved over. I think, I've heard of people that have been using their car excessively and they have to go places and pay for charging when they go places. And I mean, when I first thought about, and I mean, I feel like I didn't know shit because I kind of thought I was like, oh yeah, okay, so you take your car, you go to gas, you plug it in, whatever. People are like, I'm plugging my car, it's costing me, I have to pay, let's say, $20 if I want it faster, it's more, and then sometimes it's more than gas, it's longer waiting. So if I want to fuel my car, I pull in, it takes me a minute to go from a empty tank to a full tank. So I plug in my car. Now I have to find something to do for this time while this car is charging. So imagine I'm driving I'm driving to a different, so I'm in Toronto driving to Montreal, and it's going to take me 5 hours. And I have, say, during winter, maybe my battery's going to last me halfway there, right? Then at that point, I really want to charge. So I want to make sure that I drive, know there's a charger. Now, I don't know, it's hard because I've heard cases where people have mapped out their stops so they could charge their car, wait, or charge their car, be at a hotel, wait it out, stay the night, yada, yada. And people have not had access. The charger's been damaged, it's not working, it's no longer there, etc. But it was there on their mapping software or however they plan their route. So this tends to be a problem at times. And this is something that concerns, most people. If I hop in my car, I know that there will be a gas station somewhere that I can get gas. Even if I ran out of gas, I could call CAA or AA or whatever auto service, and they will come and bring me gas and get me to the next gas station. If I have a Tesla where I can't actually do that, I have to get a tow truck, and the tow truck has to come tow me to somewhere that has a power outlet. I don't know, tow me to a charging station. That'll tow my car fast enough. Who knows? They have to tow me another 2 hours to a charging station. And then I have to leave my car there. Who knows? Sit around for another hour or 2 hours, a whole day to charge my car and then be on my way. I mean, that's stressful, right? At that point, I'm never going anywhere in my car again. So, I mean, it makes sense, but I'll never be into it, right? It's almost unrelated. It's almost stupid to compare, but I'll tell you, everybody, almost everybody who has had a kid at some point has bought their kid one of those electric vehicles where you sit in it, where your kid sits in it, like the big Jeeps and the Barbie Corvettes and whatever. Your kid sits in it, and it has it runs on battery. It has a pedal, or gas, brake, and they could drive around down the sidewalk. I bought one for my kid, right? I think I had maybe one or two. So part of the problem with those is that we used to have this thing plugged in. We used to use it here and there, but our son would use it in the house, and he'd drive around the house more often because, I mean, a lot of times you're not going out for walks and dragging along with you. Part of the problem being that these batteries, they don't last too long. Now, we're not talking about a Tesla here. We're talking about a fucking Chinese fucking made car thing that kids sit in and drive around. So it's cheap shit. I mean, cheap batteries or NiCad or whatever. But part of that stress as a parent, and right? Your kid would be in this Jeep. You think it was pretty much charged up. You go for a walk. You get halfway down the street. It's weaker and weaker. It dies. And then you're stuck having to bring this whole thing back, dragging it along, whether you picked it up or you're bent over like an old decrepit man, dragging it down the sidewalk all the way home because the battery died. This happens. And it happens all the time. To battery operated kids' toys, right? Don't, don't get me wrong, it doesn't happen to Teslas all the time, but I'm sure at some point it's happened to people where they've gotten places and gotten stuck and had to get somebody else. Okay, so I did see a YouTube video that reminds me. I was trying to think, did I see it on a TV show or a YouTube video? But it was a YouTube video where somebody basically drove their car. It was low on power. They were in somebody else's neighborhood. They noticed they had, say, like they also had Tesla, and they had a charging port or whatever. So this person it was on their Ring camera. They went into their driveway, unplugged, the owner's Tesla, and plugged it into their Tesla. The guy saw them and said, "Hey, like, what are you doing here?" And they said, "Well, okay, it's a Tesla, and so I need a charge. So I'm just going to use your charger here. We're all buddies, right? We're all Tesla fans." And so that wasn't something they really appreciated. But you could kind of see what that mentality is like. And these are mostly always Tesla owners doing this type of stuff, right? So, it's a tough one. It's a really, really tough one to get into. Who's buying the EVs? As I said, seems like a lot of old people, seems like a lot of millennials who like to sniff their own farts. A lot of the Prius crowd, right? A lot of the guys that went from a Prius to or whatever hybrid little shit boxes, they went from a Prius to a Tesla, and now you're driving around, blocking roads, being sad or whatever. Um, are EVs going to be popular in the future? It's hard. I think we're not really at the right. I don't think we have the right vehicles. It's hard to think that somebody is going out and they need a Ford F-150 electric truck for a daily anything. Like, I don't know. It's really tough. Um, a lot of those trucks, I mean, you got a lot of diesel trucks. They're not too bad. I mean, filling some of these trucks, you're talking about maybe 150 bucks, 160 bucks to fill. Um, unless you're really environmentally cautious, it just doesn't seem like it makes any sense because at that point, you're almost paying, I could almost guarantee that you're paying a very similar amount when it comes to, fuel and electricity, but wear and tear on stuff like tires, we hear a lot. Yes, you're not going to have maybe a problem with having to use, coolant and, different oils and lubricants and this and that, belts and pulleys and some of the stuff that you have in regular cars. So I can imagine that's amazing stuff, but we're not talking. And listen, I'd buy an electric, maybe sports car, right? Just out of the sake of, I know it's tough, right? The Ferrari sound, the Ferrari look, the feel of the engine, and replace that with something that has no feel and no sound. But at the same time, it's a toy. So it's a bit different. But if I'm going to do something that's reliable, I have to spend time with my family and make sure they're safe and get where they're going and blah, 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 blah. I mean, I just can't imagine I'm going to do that on an EV. I'm going to do that on a car that I think may be a bit more up to the challenge, right? And that's for long distance commuting. Um, would I drive a Tesla around, or well, I wouldn't really bother with Tesla at this point, but would I drive an EV? Yeah, I would probably drive one around, but I can't imagine going out if I had a choice and buying one with other cars on the market that are, a bit better and more refined and using a normal engine at this point. If I had to look at it and I said, well, do I need a new car at this point? If my next car, if I'm going to buy a new car, 2025, 2026, that's going to last me until 2020. I like to have a car that lasts me for 5 years. At least if it lasts me for 5 years, I'm happy. So if I buy a car for the next 5 years, I think my car is going to last me for a while. So I'm happy with it. But if I was to buy a new car for another 5 years, it wouldn't be an EV. I would be buying a gas powered car for the next 5 years, 2020, 2030. Let's see what happens. But for now, it just doesn't seem like there's much point. You're in an adoption phase. I like having a speedometer. I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm a man. Maybe it's because I'm a kind of a traditional type of guy where, I can drive a car. I don't need a warning system to tell me there's people next to me. I don't need a car that parks itself. I don't need a lot of the stuff that's obviously not catered to people like me. So at that point, it's hard to want to pay for stuff. It's hard to want to pay for, special mirrors to put up my makeup or, as I said, a car that reverses itself or parallel parks itself or it parks itself or pulls out parking spaces itself. I don't need that. I need a car that's nice and fast and reliable and is good and sounds nice. And, so this is what people kind of want. I want. And when people kind of say, well, wow, are you talking for all people? Well, I mean, you're not talking for all people, right? I'm not talking for all people, but if you look at the market right now, what people are buying, um, people like me are buying gas cars. So that's when I speak to people or I see people, that's who's buying what and how they're buying it. It's a whole situation of, you know, men, especially men, I think 40s, 50s and up, are obviously buying gas cars. There are guys that aren't buying gas cars, but and EVs, but those are also the guys that are buying yellow socks with ducks on them or do stuff like feminism. So all the power to you. But hey, you know what? I think 2025 is going to bring us a different type of environment for electric vehicles. Two things we're going to see. We're either going to see further division of EVs broken down into stuff that's going to bring in the audience like me. And that is, we're going to start seeing cars, EV sports cars and muscle cars that are attractive to men and marketed at men, trucks, Jeeps, off-roading stuff that are marketed at men. And I think that's going to be a big thing that drives the EV market. If we don't see that, you're not going to see EVs, continue to grow. Like, they're not growing at this point. And part of that problem is that you don't have the right people buying the right cars. And no, as I said, right, I'm not going to buy one of these weird looking Teslas that you see everybody in their white Tesla Y or whatever it is that looks like some sort of egg. I'm not into that Focus. You see those new BMWs that look like fucking weird caskets or whatever. Like, I mean, with the little slitty eyes and whatever. I'm not buying that shit. That's whack, right? I have a whole bunch of BMWs that I like, that I own, right? And they're not fucking these weird ass looking BMWs. So you get a lot of BMW owners now. You're not getting rid of your BMWs to buy new ones because they look all shit, and you're waiting till they redesign them again. Same with Tesla, right? You look at a lot of the electric cars. Mercedes had it. Was it AQA or AQS or whatever? Mercedes had one. It looks horrible. Nobody wants an egg-shaped car. Nobody wants cars that look like bubbles and clouds. And when I say nobody, I'm not going to talk for women. I'm not going to talk for, who knows, most millennials or Generation Z. I'm not talking for LGBT or anybody else. I'm talking for a specific type of, age group and guys that like, if you like sports cars and muscle cars and fast cars and you were modding up your cars and doing stuff, you're obviously not jumping on this bandwagon, right? And so until you start seeing, maybe they're talking about the new Prelude, the new NSX, the new Supra, the new, these cars being electric, you're starting to see maybe some people interested in it. Once they start opening up the technology for tuners to a specific level, and engine builders start getting into building electric, components and parts, and you start seeing it in shops, it'll get more adoption. But right now, no. I go to my shop. They don't know what's going on. I can imagine, people tell me, you got a Tesla. Where do you take it? You're taking it to Tesla. You're right. I'm not able to go to my garage and fix my car. So, I mean, it's something that is just not my bag of tricks. Maybe it's a bag of tricks for other people, but it's not there. Who's buying Teslas? Who's buying EVs? Not me, right? As I said, right? A lot of older people, older women, older men, the Karens and I can't remember what we call them, but pretty much the male Karens, the Kevins and the Karens. The Kevins and the Karens are buying EVs. And that's it. But aside from that, who else, right? Who else? I don't know. You might be listening, disagreeing with me, and then you're going to turn around to your husband and you're going to say, hey, John, we bought an EV, fuck this guy. Well, I mean, you're not me, right? Just like that rapper said, Kendrick Lamar, right? They not like us. So anyways, hey, thanks for tuning in to Better Assholes. Until next time, have a good one.